Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be on the dead voting in the last election in the US. I've been pretty silent about my opinions of the US election because I wanted to sort of let the election happen and then sort of wait for all the facts to come out on either side of what's going on there and just sort of base my opinion on factual things. So I didn't want to sort of jump to a conclusion, oh, it was a stolen election or whatever. I wanted to base my opinions on facts. So I was watching a report by Fleccas Talks, and he was showing that the dead had been voting. So I figured, hey, I'll check it out. I'll do some research and check it out. So I'm just going to show you the research process and show you that potentially the dead have voted in the last election. And this is not to prove that they have voted, but there's some anomalies where dead people were registering to vote. It doesn't mean that they actually voted, but it means that they registered to vote. And I want that to be clear. And that in itself is very, very strange. So right now I'm showing you the Michigan Voter Information site. And basically this is just a site from the state of Michigan which shows whether or not you're registered to vote. So you can type in your name and address and date of birth and then check if you're on the voter rolls so that you can vote in the next election. This is important in two major ways. One of the contentions that people had, especially in Wisconsin and Michigan and all these swing states, was there was an anomaly not just in potentially dead people voting, but there was an anomaly in the numbers of people voting. So typically a US election, Americans are not the greatest about voting. Typically, a US election has about 60% of the people turn out and vote. Well, in this last election, that number was around 80 to 90%, depending on the states. And the states which were considered swing states, it was around 90% of the people voting in the election, which is very unusual. I don't think Biden was that exciting that people are going to go out and, hey, we got to vote for Biden. And I don't think Trump, even though you might hate him, you're not going to be that energetic about voting against him. The people that would be the most energized to vote against Trump were in California. And California saw a slight increase, about 10% increase in voting, but not these huge increases that Michigan and Wisconsin saw, and Georgia. So you would think that the people that'd be most likely to vote for Trump, or against Trump, I should say, would be the ones that would come out in droves or do more mail-in ballots, but that wasn't the case. So the anomaly that I'm speaking of is just the sheer number of voters. And people, there was false claims. These are false claims, where they said, well, more people voted than actually were registered. Well, that's not true. The registration is much higher. As I said, it was about 90% of the people who were registered to vote voted. However, if it's the case that a huge percentage of dead people registered, well, then maybe instead of 90% of the voters that potentially could have voted, it was more like 100 or even higher percentage of the voters that voted. So it could be that the whole bunch of dead people potentially registering to vote skewed the numbers to make it look like a smaller percentage of the registered voters actually voted, whereas it could be even higher percentage of registered voters voted, which would be very unusual. Typically in places like Australia where they have mandatory voting, even in those places where they basically force you to vote, you only get about 90% of people voting. So for the US to have similar results is kind of weird. I would have expected that the numbers of people voting would be higher this year because of the fact that it is the mail-in voting, and it makes it much, much easier to vote. So I would expect an uptick in the number of people that voted, but not to the levels that we saw. So that's just an anomaly that I want to point out and speak about. But what I really want to show you right now is just this dead registration voting. So let's take a look. I have a list. This is my list of all the names of dead people. So it's a few thousand people. And what I did is I just took. I'll give you the links to this so you can check it out yourself. I just picked a random one, this Adam Roy. Okay, so I'm just going to go back. So his key information is Adam Roy. He was born in 1943 in September 27th, and his zip code is this. So I'm just going to grab his zip code. And so Roy Adams, and then he died. This guy died in 1995. Okay, so he's been dead for quite some time. So let's take his information and put it inside here. So we got Roy, okay, and Adams, and he was born in September 1943, and we put in his zip code, and we just search. So this will show whether or not Roy has registered to vote. So we'll just search that. It takes a second here. Maybe I'm very impatient. I'll click it again. Okay, so yeah, now you can see, let me go back in here. Yes, you are registered. So Roy Adams, who's been dead for 25 years, is registered to vote, and they give all of his information that he needs to do in order to vote in person or through mail-in voting. So that's very strange that somebody that's been dead for 25 years is registered to vote. Now, the list that I showed you is several thousand names, all of which, if you do this kind of little experiment, you will see that they are registered to vote. So a lot of Fleccas missed the point that I was trying to make, was that maybe instead of the problem being that not only the dead are potentially voting, but it could skew the math in terms of the number of people that are registered to vote. And that would make it look like only a percentage of people that are able to vote actually did vote. Whereas it's probably a much higher percentage. If you remove all the dead ones, let's say they don't actually get their votes counted, or, well, a large percentage of these voters should be stripped from the rolls. And that would mean that even a higher percentage of people voted, which would be very unusual. So this is makes one question the integrity of the voting. So yeah, just a quick video. I'll put the links into my description so you can check this out yourself. I was shocked when I found out how many dead people potentially could have voted in the last election. Didn't say that they did vote, but they could have voted. And we're talking thousands of names. Actually, I have access to a database of all the all the dead people in the United States who have died since the beginning of the United States, and it might be an interesting thing to run a little experiment where you could basically go through all those names and see how many of those names of dead people were registered to vote in the 2020 election. And if there's a huge number of those names, maybe then there's something fishy, because it's really hard. I don't want to speak badly of the dead, but I think it's really hard for the dead to register to vote. It's just not a normal thing. So this has been Socially Triggered. I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.